All right. Hi, John. How are you?
Hi, Kent. Good to see you today.
You too. Well, I'm sitting here with John Decker, and John Decker is leading the Campus Ministry Link project. He's going to tell you more about it, but today I wanted to talk to John because he's been immersing himself in this area of ministry that has to do with what I've written a book about called The Transition. And essentially, what it is helping young people not just survive the transition from high school to college and young adulthood, but thrive in their faith. So John's doing a lot of work with that, and I wanted to sit down and interview him and get this resource into your hands. And so, John, tell us a little bit about you, about your story, and a little bit of your background.
Sure, Ken. I'd be glad to. By the way, I've appreciated knowing you over the years, and I love the work you're doing with this forthcoming transition book.
Thanks.
So, so let me start a little bit with my college experience. I started at St. Lawrence University as a non-believer. In fact, I went to Woodstock a few weeks before I landed at St. Lawrence University
Oh,
into a
wow.
pre-med program. But
I'm
I
sure
spent
you have all. I'm sure you have all kinds of stories about Woodstock.
yeah, well, I do for a later time.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I was heading towards a nice, pre-med program there. However, I found that the friends I made the first few days really got me going on the wrong track.
Hmm.
With the whole freedom at college, you're just not used to these things. It's guys, girls, everything, and it amazingly can put you down a path that really drives your emotions and takes you away from your studies and leads you into doing things that really aren't right.
Yeah.
I really wish I had met some believers at that point. That would have been great to set me on a right track because it took me a while to undo the damage of that first couple of years.
Yeah, that was me too, John. I went full fledged into the chaos. I was not a believer at the time, and so my story was similar.
Yeah, yeah. But I did become a believer about halfway through college, and so a little later in life, my wife and I were working. I was working in the aerospace area with Lockheed Martin and Phillips, and my wife was working, and we were starting to raise children, and they were coming into high school, and she and I started an InterVarsity Christian Fellowship up at Syracuse University,
Hmm.
and it was just we always felt we became Christians in the middle of the college experience, so that was just a natural for us.
Sure.
And there's a couple things we noticed. First, we really noticed firsthand that it was true that around 70% of the Christian kids are unprepared for mostly the social scene on the college campus.
Yeah.
And things happen those first few days and they just wash away. The Navigators did a study that said the first 72 hours are key to the success of a Christian. And it actually has a huge influence on the non-believers.
Yeah. Wow. I know 72 hours. It's such a short time frame, right? But the first of anything kind of establishes the rest, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's just because they want to meet new friends, and those associations are so strong in the bonds. Once you start locking into them, you keep walking with those friends. It's just the way it works.
Hmm.
So I noticed that this was happening, and then the other thing I noticed is the non-believers. If you think of this, they kind of parachute in separately for the first time in their life. They're not connected to any peer groups.
Hmm.
They're on their own. They're ready to reinvent themselves. Nobody knows me here,
Yeah.
and let's explore life. And I desperately want to meet new friends. That's number one.
Absolutely.
And so they're just looking for friendly people they can connect with. So I started, I thought of that as kind of a sweet spot of time. You have like this wonderful low-hanging fruit in terms of evangelism and outreach that you could do very relationally and
Yeah.
naturally. When you're in the lunch lines, everyone's meeting and greeting. Hey, who are you? What are you all about? Hey, I'm Kent, and I went to the school in Boston, and by the way, there's a InterVarsity barbecue on Friday. You want to come? Yeah, sure. Why not? They'll come, and they will see kids come to Christ because
Yes.
these kids will encounter something they've never seen before.
Hmm.
So I started dreaming, what would it be like in America if juniors and seniors in high school who were getting a little bored with their faith, in other words, they've got a lot of head knowledge
Hmm.
and they've heard all about reaching out to their friends for Christ, but they likely have not led other non-believers to the Lord.
Right.
They really haven't. And as a first generation Christian, that's really a powerful experience. I mean, it was for me
Yes.
when I became a Christian when I was 20. Sorry, um, um,
You don't look
that
70, John.
yeah, well, age well. uh, that for me and my friends, it was like, this is amazing. Who knew that God was actually real and He could forgive you and send you to heaven and put His Spirit upon you? Nobody knows this. We have to tell everybody. And if you think of it from the perspective of an unbeliever, in their clique, with them, nobody knows that either. So it's all brand new, and it's very exciting. So that experience kept a lot of us, in the Jesus movement days, really strong with Christ. And if you think about in God's economy, how does He really want to work with the next generation? I think they also have to experience vicariously what it takes to see people go transition from darkness to light.
Yes.
You know, so I noticed that this. So I started thinking, what would it be like, in America if juniors and seniors were getting a little bored, if they realized this sweet spot, this opportunity was right in front of them, and they really engaged. Then this was really drove home to me when there was an InterVarsity Christian Fellowship group in Geneseo. I heard a story where a student got radically transformed right in the beginning of freshman orientation, and all the church kids in InterVarsity saw it, and you can imagine them thinking something like, now I know my parents took me to church all these years. I mean,
Yeah.
they really saw this. It's a little exaggeration, but they really saw this transformation going on. Well, they got so involved that they helped with students lead 26 other kids to the Lord that semester in
Wow.
that dorm. So they come home for Christmas, instead of being cool to the faith, aloof, maybe
Hmm.
ashamed of a few things that they did. They come home saying, hey, I've got the best friends I've ever had. I'm really growing in the faith. My roommate and I helped lead this young guy to the Lord, and we're helping disciple him. And the kids in their youth group go, that sounds pretty legit. I'd like to get a
Yeah.
piece of that. So suddenly theory becomes reality. They've been taught they should reach out to their friends. Now suddenly it becomes possible in their minds. So we look at that opportunity as something that can ignite the hearts of young people and
Yeah.
start showing that evangelism, sharing Christ is feasible, and it can really, and that will of course transform the campuses on
Yes.
the freshmen, and it can go back and impact the high schools.
Well, there's such an amazing opportunity in college, right, for the gospel to spread quickly because you have thousands of students living in community, and in some ways it is a bubble. But the good part of that is things spread rapidly, and so there's an amazing opportunity for multiplication and growth, and for God to move exponentially there. In fact, in chapter 1 of the book, I kind of lay out some history about different campus revivals that happened,
Mm.
and largely not just out throughout the United States history, but throughout history of the world. A lot of these movements start with young people because of that very nature of things when they're together.
Yeah, it's a unique time on college when they're all together. There's no other time in life where it's acceptable and okay to talk about your views with anyone.
Hmm.
It's a little hard to do that in high school. It's hard to do it in the work world, but
Hmm.
that's what college is about. So it's a perfect incubation time to see movements.
Well, John, tell us a little bit about what you're working on currently. I mentioned in the beginning that you're leading the Campus Ministry Link project. What is that? What's it all about? What's your role with it? How'd that get started? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Um, you know, this is really the culmination of, I think, some things God has been doing for years through various organizations. Out of the experience that I told you, I became the Northeast Director of Youth Transition Network, which has done a wonderful job in pioneering this whole effort of connecting. And through that, in the Northeast, I had some great experiences. One of them, I think you can see on the Campus Renewal website, about Black Rock Church,
Hmm.
where a nice large church was documenting that, yeah, they were losing about 70% of the students. And when they connected them ahead of time with campus ministry, some of them got Christian roommates and so on. The very next fall, they found that none of them had fallen away.
Yes.
I mean, that was fantastic, and it
Yeah.
just shows you the power of doing that. So what we're trying to do is kind of pick up and make that a little bit more national. Campus Renewal has been around for about 20 years. Their hallmark has been creating united movements of Christ on college campuses between campus ministries. And through that, they have a huge amount of credibility with campus ministries, denominations. There's a lot of favor in them. And they actually had some of this same thought on their mind, years ago as well. So over this past year, they've been working on a way to make it easy for every single student in America when they're a sophomore or junior in high school to find a college that has good campus ministries.
Yes.
Have great, compelling videos on there that will encourage them and their parents to do so. I mean, the parents are a huge part of this solution.
Absolutely.
Kids think they're bulletproof,
Okay.
but parents know better.
Yeah.
Right? So, you have to connect. So it makes it really easy, and you can search, and within a couple of weeks here, you'll be able to search and find any campus ministry and any campus in the United States, and then connect with them and start establishing a relationship before you land there.
Wonderful.
Plus, make sure you pick a college that's got good ministries.
Wonderful. And so you said the project, the web part of it's going to launch in a few weeks here?
Yes, you can go to campusrenewal.org now and look at campus ministry link, and there are some tools you can use right today that will get the job done, but it'll have a full launch soon.
Wonderful. So you shared a little bit of the statistics about the 70%, and I think originally it's still not a great statistic, but originally it was more grim than it actually is. It was that 70% fall away from their faith. With some newer research, we find that 70% stop attending for a time. Some fall away from their faith, and out of that 70%, many of them still don't return. It's about 2/3 that of them return, and when they do return to the church, it's sporadic. So there's a major gap there. But despite all those statistics that can be somewhat grim, what are you encouraged by in your work with young people and with Campus Ministry Link, and what do you see God maybe doing out of this and through this? Because we can get caught up on the statistics. It's important to know them, but what's encouraging you right now in that area?
Yeah, well, the team and I and everyone that's working with are really encouraged, because we have seen situations like the one I just cited at that church where if you connect, it really goes way better. It's as if it's hard to jumpstart a car until you actually touch the terminal. You got a human-to-human connection, And so when you do that, it's amazing that it suddenly preserves all that work and labor that parents and churches have plowed into students for all these years. And now these are equipped people. Plus, if they have a mindset that they can be a leader and not a follower, and they can bring people to Christ instead of just being defensive, it's we're starting to see the results of that, and it's really encouraging. So what we're finding is this whole thing is very, very scalable. What can be done in several churches can be done in any church. It can be done in a city, and it can be done in a nation. So we're blessed by seeing this unified result of the major denominations and campus ministries making this a national priority. So we expect that in the near term, for the summer and fall of 2016, to have enough students connect where they will generate testimonies. They'll come back. We're asking churches to go on this, get their students connected, follow them, and then in December or January, when on Christmas break, come back and have a campus college experience night where they can share testimonies of what's happened. We'll encourage the rest of the church, and we'll record some of those testimonies and use them in the movement nationally.
Yeah.
So with the intentional top-down roll-down, and with getting churches in every city starting to share with their other church friends and other partner churches in the area, we expect that by 2017, it can be pretty normal for high school kids to be getting this vision and connecting, that it'll seem like, yeah, this is what you do when you go to college. You find one that's got good campus ministries or a good Christian college, and then you connect in advance. So
yeah,
what gets us excited is to say, that could actually double the number of Christians on college campuses.
Yes.
Right? And if they will be fruitful, especially during those few weeks, you could perhaps triple the number of Christians that will eventually graduate out of colleges into society.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You mentioned, so the project seems to focus on helping students connect with a campus ministry ahead of time. But you're talking a little bit about churches. Um, so what, from the church's perspective, is there, what role do they play in this? How do they, not only with mentoring the students that they're sending out, but how does this project also help students connect with the church, or is it primarily focused around campus ministries?
Oh, yeah, good question. Yes, definitely with a church. I mean, it's critical that students do connect with a church, so they don't just have a campus ministry
Mm-hmm.
experience in college. And one of the ways that work is many campus ministries will have shuttles that go out every Sunday to the various
Yeah,
different churches. So we encourage that. But we will also are inviting churches and other organizations to be on this database so they can find them in advance too.
that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, yeah,
Because I think you're right. We do have to think of it holistically, right? Because the campus ministries, they've been doing this for a long time. They know how to, help students where they're at in that phase of life, and connect them with the resources they need. But then those students are going to be involved in the church for most of their lives after college. And so I think we can glean from one another and help one another in that.
yeah. And we're hoping to give them a mindset of what that looks like when they graduate. You'll have church involvement, but it isn't just going to church. It's how can you be successful and how can you be a Christian in your business, in the world, and in what some people might call like the seven mountains of society, like Bill Bright,
Hmm.
coined the idea. So influence. So if you can bake that idea, even when the kids are looking for their career and major, the hope is we intend over time to have lots of partners helping us, but be able to give thought and ideas and resources so students can find careers and majors that will be God honoring, but also how to express that in their field of service.
Absolutely. Cool. Um, so, in your experience working with campus ministry, working with young people in your study and research, what would you say are the three biggest challenges that a Christian young person is going to face as they transition from high school to college, and how would you tell them to prepare?
Yeah. I'd say the first that we'll just experience is the need for friends. They
Hmm.
should just realize that there will be a culture shock there.
Yes.
It's more than they expect. And so if they're armed ahead of time to understand that, then they will be proactive. So what we suggest is go to the campus, really connect with the campus ministry, look at their Facebook pages, offer to, hey, every campus ministry is doing new student outreach to
Hmm.
meet other freshmen. Well, help out. It's a great way to meet other freshmen and new
That's
friends.
great.
So be proactive, develop a good set of friends. And you're going to need study partners. You're going to need people to help keep you on track academically. So, so that's one. They face that. And also, I would say maybe defining the interaction between them and non-believers.
Well, so
So,
just backing up a minute, John, on the choosing the right friends. I think that's so key because the scripture, and I teach this to my kids all the time. He who walks with the wise will be wise, right? And so
yep,
it's actually a whole chapter of the book that I dedicate to choosing the right friends. It's in the relationships section, and I talk about relationships with the other sex, with the opposite sex, as well as how do you choose the right friends because they're going to influence so much or so many of your decisions throughout your college years, and you're going to influence them. So I think that's key. So choosing the right friends. What's the second one that you have?
the second one is being able to define your interaction with non-believers. For not for all Christian kids, but for a lot of them, they've been a bit of a bubble and they haven't interacted a lot with it depends if they go to a Christian school or whatever, but really defining the interaction so they know they have a game plan in mind. And I think first it starts with love. So it's not being defensive,
Mm-hmm.
it's being offensive in the sense of loving them.
Yeah.
So it's realizing that these are people that God created, that this is a chance for them to interact with people. So your interaction is love, but it's genuineness. It's you just be yourself. You're with yourself, but then you also let your the spirit part of yourself or the faith part of yourself let it just come out naturally early.
Yes.
So they understand. Maybe it's the situation can be anything. It could be just an introduction, and you say, "Oh, I go to this fantastic church." Well, a lot of students they'll be, "Oh, that's great, that's cool." They may not be a believer at all, but they'll respect that. But at least they know, okay, there's something here that defines this person. or perhaps they're asking you, to go to the pub, and you say, it's actually I've decided really not to, use alcohol. It's just, however deep they want to go into it,
Hmm.
but just define things early. It's so much easier if you
Yes.
just define it, and then,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then you don't have to make all these micro decisions later on. You
that's
just
true.
define who you are.
That's really good, and I think that for a lot of Christians, it's I've seen it be a difficult hurdle for them to overcome this idea that I think the world or culture has this idea that you have to agree on everything or have unity of belief before you relate, and I see
Right.
Christians getting scared off when they're not coming from the same worldview as someone else. But I think what's more reality in the biblical worldview is that we can love each other without agreeing on everything, and I can honor another human being because they're made in the image of God. And so we don't have to agree on everything. We don't have to, have the same views in order to love someone and to relate. And I think Christians get stuck on that sometimes.
Yeah.
If Jesus went by that, none of us would probably be here today, right? As
Right.
Christians.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that's a great point. Another one is roommates. There's some statistics that say that now this is all students, not just Christians, but why do students leave a particular college?
Hmm.
The single largest indicator is roommates, believe it or not.
Wow.
So you never know what you're going to get, and so
Very
you need to learn to prepare for that. Now there are some measures you can take. We really encourage people to try to hit the ground running strong. If you can find a Christian roommate, that's awesome. We will have a section of the site that will be live later in the year that will help you find a
wow,
Christian roommate.
fantastic.
But you can do things proactively yourself. You can contact the campus ministries. Have you heard of anyone that's looking for a roommate?
Hmm.
Now, there's usually a deadline for that. It's like May 1st or May 10th.
Hmm.
Uh, but if you can figure that out, there's also certain dorms that are substance free or tend to have more believers in them. There's also affiliating with some good solid clubs. There's some like sorority fraternity. I would say like a service fraternity. They're not necessarily Christians, but they're kind of sound kids. See
Right.
who would be just good people, good study partners. So if you can proactively the first year get a Christian roommate, that is so powerful.
Sure.
You can't always, but you have to learn to
Yeah.
deal with that.
Well, and I like how you're saying it too, like, because it would be easy to kind of try to find your Christian ministry, your Christian roommate, but you're also saying we need to learn how to engage unbelievers. And so I think those things line up well. We've got to learn how to do both well. We've got to learn how to live in community, and we've got to learn to be like Jesus and love those around us that aren't anything like us.
Yeah, yeah. We need to have the confidence in doing that, and our dream is to see this percolate down into the high school years, where students are much more apt to reach out to their friends. It might be a Young Life, a Fellowship of Christian Athletes, something of that nature, but get used to it in high school so that they know how to navigate and have some confidence when
Yeah.
they're in college.
Well, speaking of high school and even backing up a little, how would you tell parents to prepare their kids? What are some takeaways they could have in preparing their kids, and how should they start doing that to prepare them for this transition? You have any thoughts on that?
Sure. Uh, I would say in the sophomore year, some practical things are before you figure out what college you're going to go to, you want to figure out majors,
Hmm.
so you can select a college. And of course, you want to select a college, with good campus ministries, but start earlier in figuring out and praying through who are you? What are you made? What are you made of? What would be some of God's calling for your life? Just be more proactive about that. So
Right.
that will drive a lot of your destiny and what college you go to. And so we're planning to add some resources on the site, along with that. Michael Brodeur has some good things called Destiny Finder, for instance,
Cool.
and there's a lot of things out there that we'll try to point people to. But
That's
if you can,
awesome. And I
yeah,
mean, it's basically right knowing the bent of your child, right? As a
hmm
parent, helping them find what their unique voice is, what their unique calling is from God. Proverbs 22:6. Start your children off the way they should go, and even when they're old, they shall not depart from it. It speaks of helping them find their bent, right?
yeah, absolutely,
Really
yeah,
good. Any
Yeah.
other things you'd share for parents that?
Well, let me think. In the sophomore year, and then it's really the decision whether I want to go to a Christian sophomore or junior year, whether I want to go to a Christian or a secular college. So that's an important decision,
Mhm.
and you've really got to pray through that one. We encourage parents to recognize the fact that Christian colleges are not perfect,
Right.
and there's always several different types of people in there. There's the parents that sent their students there as a last-ditch attempt to get them straightened around. And so they will usually develop a kind of a party culture underground. They look great and smiley on the outside, and then you get to know them and you sucked in. This becomes very confusing to Christian students.
Yes.
How did this happen? And I've known personally ones that have got kind of caught into that. So, but if you do go to a Christian college, it's good to find who are the intentional Christian clubs, maybe the evangelistic club or the mission club. Make those your first set of friends, get some grounding, and then you can start navigating and reaching out.
Mm-hmm. Good.
And then in the junior year, it's all about selecting the right college and one with ministries. I guess kind of an extension of the sophomore year, but a little bit more. You're starting to do college visits.
Mm-hmm.
When you're doing college visits, it's a great idea to visit the campus ministries, maybe stay overnight in a dorm.
Yep.
Get a real feel for it, less culture shock. And then the senior year, after selecting colleges, you want to start developing some good relationships with the leaders. If you want to do it right and be proactive, you can get to know them. You can ask them, is there a Facebook page? Can I get to know some upperclassmen? Can I get to know some other incoming freshmen? What are you doing for new student outreach? Can I help?
Mm-hmm.
Things like that, like develop. And then an important question is, what Christian events are going on during freshman orientation and the week following?
Mm-hmm.
Put them on your calendar. Put them on your calendar and tell your friends, because those are important events.
Absolutely. No, I know. My oldest son is not yet to the point where he's in college, but I've started early. Not just for college, but I think our culture doesn't have a good way of helping boys grow into men, and so we've been working on some of that stuff as he gets towards puberty and gets ready to celebrate his 13th birthday. But you have a son that is past college, and he's a vibrant believer. What are some ways you poured into him, sowed into him when and this is off the script that we had, but what are some ways you invested in him to help him make that transition and do that well?
I think in working with him in high school, that in modeling, we were doing some campus ministry when he was in high school, so he really had a little bit of the flavor, but just giving him opportunities to express his faith and mature and make some mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
and be a little bit on his own earlier. Learn to hear the voice of the Holy Spirit earlier,
What sort of mistakes
rather than just a bunch of rules.
Yeah, what sort of freedoms did you give him, and mistakes that you gave him the ability to make that you think helped him the most?
I think we just developed trust with him, where he didn't the more he was a pretty good kid. I mean, he didn't really have a lot of signs. It wasn't that hard in a sense with him,
Mm-hmm.
but we just gave him freedom to make his own decisions, choose his friends. He chose well, and then we would give guidance, but he would seem to have relied on that guidance. So he was ready when he went
Yes.
to know how to do a lot of this.
So you were
trying to get that maturity earlier, and I think that so many, this may not be specific to him, but so many students are, their Christian life is all about rules.
Yes.
If I do this and do this, I won't be in trouble, and I guess I'm good with God.
Yeah.
And because of that, they have not learned to hear the voice of the Spirit.
Very true.
Right. And there's some people that have done some good work in that. Jeff Shaw from Youth Transition Network. If you go to Youth Transition Network website, they've got a great material for helping students figure that out, and parents work with parents to give them tools to help them hear the voice of the Spirit earlier. One example he gave once with his student was someone that came home from school and he had cheated on a test,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're sitting in the car, and it could have been you idiot, you're making your parents ashamed, things like that. But it's more of, how did that make you feel?
Yes.
And so, really kind of terrible. This is, well, would you like to have that feeling go away? This is,
Yeah.
well, yes. So he showed them how to get forgiveness and cause that feeling go away. And they went through and they prayed, and the feeling went away, and it was a lifelong lesson for that student.
That's
So
very
it's a
true.
matter of, moving from rules based to like relationship based.
And we should move more and more from rules to relationship because when the kids are young, they need a lot of those boundaries. And then as they grow older, we loose them from some of those. But I think it boils down to sins of commission versus sins of omission, right? It seems like a lot of Christians tend to focus on the sins of commission. You've committed these sins. Don't do this. Stay away from this. Don't drink. Don't smoke pot. Don't whatever the don't is. Don't have sex before marriage. But we never focus on the sins of omission. In other words, what's the potential God has for your life? What opportunities are we missing because we're so focused on rules and regulations? And so they're both part of holiness, right? I'm not convinced that when we stand before Jesus, he's going to focus on all the things we did wrong. What about the opportunities that he puts in front of us? I think that's what you're talking about partially is there's freedoms and things that we need to allow our kids to experience and choose, and then guide them when they either make the right choice or when they mess up to help them navigate that.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I'm not sure I did that. Looking back, did as many proactive things as possible, giving them experiences. But I really see now that in high school, you want to, it can be mission trips, it can be bringing them out in ministry in the street, but if it can especially be with their peers, if they can start to minister with their peers, that's why I'm really, big on things like Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Young Life, Youth for Christ, things like that in the high school, and encourage them, to do things that will be fruitful. It's all about taking this generation, learning them to be fruitful in the spirit, and typically you'll find one or two students that will be a leader in that area.
Yes.
Well, they can help lead the pack. So pour into them in your church, get them to start leading the pack in the high school to say, hey, you actually can bring faith to students, and you can pray with them, see the Spirit work in their lives.
Yeah. Well, very true. Young people travel in packs. I've certainly
Yeah.
noticed that, especially as honestly more with college students sometimes, but young people in general. Very true. Well, so it sounds awesome, the project that you're working on with the Link project. What's the long-term vision for this project, and what's your biggest challenge in carrying out the vision? What are some of the big obstacles and things happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say the long-term vision is, of course, to make it ubiquitous, where the culture in America says when you go into college, you prepare when you're in high school.
Mm-hmm.
So that's taking what started and expanding it, adding more resources, and just seeking God for other partnerships and things to make this embedded more in the culture of America. Um, we plan to add more teaching and training and discipleship resources.
Mm-hmm.
A big thing is discipleship of non-believers. So there's discipleship of believers. When I say non-believers, new believers.
Yes.
So out of this, we expect there to be many more new believers. Well, they really need to get discipled quickly in a way that engages them. I remember when reading the one of the books about Campus Crusade when they first started, when they were working in fraternities and sororities, they saw God move, and right away they took the new believers with them to the next one, and this says, why don't you share your story and get
That's
involved, right? And so it's teaching them that this love that they've now experienced in their heart is shareable,
Yeah.
and that's part of the discipleship. So it's kind of rapid multiplication, small groups, things like that.
Yeah.
So we'd like to, bring together resources to help this, if there's another Jesus movement, which we believe there will be,
Mm-hmm.
that we have tools in the church to help them multiply and grow well in Christ.
Awesome. Well, I'm super excited about the project. I think it's going to help a lot of people to connect those dots. Any closing thoughts that you want to share? Things that are burning on your heart to just get across to this generation or to leaders of this generation?
I would say believe big. believe that God has a plan for America and that he's bringing forces together to really take this loss of youth and transform it into something that's a force. That just the understanding, just praying and thinking about this whole dynamic, what we call the sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
You can Google a little article, InterVarsity Sweet Spot, to see about that. But just think about what's going on there and capitalize on it so that we can we can just transform, how we're looking at that whole preparation for college and transition. And I would say, just we're generating more and more good videos. Use the videos as a way to spread the message. So the other thing I would say is, if you're a church in a city and you get this idea that this is part of God's plan to help our younger generation, spread it to the other churches in your city.
Mm-hmm.
We're always looking for things that can help unify the body of Christ.
Yeah.
Well, this is the common, everyone is concerned about their youth. And if we can help them in a given city work together, maybe bring the students the high school students onto a college campus early so they can experience campus ministry, get the taste of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, so there's top down, there's things that will come down through the denominations and so on, but that never really works fully. Things need to be bottomed up.
Yes.
So if the Lord puts this on your heart as a pastor, dig into it, figure out the nuances that really work for you, and then share it with your other fellow pastors in the area.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate. I've known the president of Campus Renewal for a long time, Jeremy Story, and really appreciate the ministry, his heart, your heart, to unify people together, and they do such a fantastic job at that. So going forward, what's the best way people can connect with you if they want to, whether that's website, Twitter, Facebook, those sort of things, where they can see what's kind of coming down the pike in the way of this Link project?
Sure. Well, if you want to connect with me, you can go to my email address is john.decker@campusrenewal.org, and you can email me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but if you go to campusrenewal.org, you'll see a section on there for Campus Ministry Link.
Okay.
This will be growing. So go on there, dig in. There's already some videos and things. There's things people can use today. So one of our passions is, again, at this time we're right now in early August 2016. If we can get as many kids connected to generate movements and stories for the fall, that would be great. So I'd say start using that, and then anticipate that the site will have more and more power and availability and ability soon.
Fantastic. Well, John, thanks so much for taking the time to share your heart with us and what the Lord's doing through you. Stay on the line after I click off here. I just want to catch up with you a little bit, but thank you again. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you know Jeremy and so on. It's a great team there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.